ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning. Welcome to Durian ASEAN. So sorry about the technical problem just now. Okay, this is Grace.
Hi, this is Gowri.
All right. Oh, that almost scared me really badly. But then I hope you can pardon us. Well, today is Tuesday morning and we are here at the Durian ASEAN to deliver the news from Southeast Asia. And how's everybody doing? How are you, Gowri?
I'm okay.
You seem a bit tired today.
Yeah, a little hectic day yesterday. It was quite packed with classes and meetings. But I'm back today.
Right.
To deliver our listeners with news from all over the region. Let's see what's happening.
All right. So today we have this news regarding, we can start from Malaysia today, that it's regarding around the 70 Malaysians who are involved in the ISIS militant group, which we actually reported several times before about the Malaysians being involved in this certain groups, and then they actually flew to all these countries and they're very much convinced to carry out their missions, so-called. And today we have around like 70 people. It's actually more than before, and then they have been found to be involved with the Islamic State. And also this is something very worrisome, because how is the government actually controlling or monitoring the number of people getting involved in this Islamic State?
And you're right, we reported this a lot of times before, but it seems now we have a definite figure that is about 70 Malaysians who are involved in ISIS and who have actually left the country and flown to these places in order to participate, like what you were also saying earlier, that they are convinced that as Muslims they are pretty much, they feel like this is their best way of serving their religion, or trying to, it's more like an obligation for them to actually go there and to serve and to think that, of course, this is how I do it, I fight for it. But we also have somebody from Indonesia who actually came back from ISIS to tell us that, hey, it's not really what it seems like. You know, a lot of people paint all these different pictures about ISIS, but when he came back, this one particular guy, and he said that, well, it's really not that fun to be at ISIS, to be in Syria, and even the payment that you get is really not as much as it was promised to them. And even then, even with this guy coming back and telling everyone about painting a different picture of the whole Islamic state, but people are still heading there. People are still convinced, and it seems that in order to stop these people, we need something more than just monitoring, more than just regular checkups at the airport, because apparently that's not too effective.
Yes, and at the same time, this is the huge question when it comes to this security, and as well as how all those governments have been working together. And then this ministry could ensure that no army personnel would join the ISIS. And also Abdul Rahim, he said the army, via in this investigation and intelligence of the division, together with its human resources section, were monitoring the situation. But then, like you mentioned, even after the monitoring, the number is still increasing. People are still convinced to go there and to serve. And as well as the social media is actually getting viral, the posts and the content they're uploading, it's very smart and intelligent.
And yes, social media is one of the ways that they have been trying to penetrate into the region and trying to sort of brainwash the young people or the older people, because it's not only the young people who are affected, it's quite a huge age range when it comes to people who are involved or those who have flown to ISIS in Syria. And another interesting thing is with the recent POTA, or the Prevention of Terrorism bill that was passed, could this actually be where POTA could be relevant to the current situation in the country? As much as there is a huge outcry, there's a lot of parties who are against this new terrorism bill, but there are also a certain number of people who think that, well, it could actually be a good solution or a good measure, at least for
good measurement to just at least to know the figure and then what are the steps they have taken forward. But at the same time, this is very worrisome to the country, not only to country, but then ASEAN to that standard. Well, with that, let's move on to the just very similar news regarding this ASEAN community that needs to understand non-traditional security threats, which is the ASEAN community, especially Malaysians. We just shortly reported about this Islamic State, that they need to must understand the non-traditional security and threats if not effectively tackled, and also they can actually jeopardize all this national security. So this is another level actually where ASEAN needs to understand the non-traditional security threats. And University Technology Malaysia, UTM, one of the geostrategists, Dr. Azmi Hassan, he mentioned that it was very important for people in this region to understand what was meant by this non-traditional security threat, as they were unaware that it was rampant in their societies.
And what he's concerned here is, do Malaysians actually know what are the types of different security threats that we have in this region? Because when we think of security threats, of course, Malaysia has kind of been blessed that we don't really get that much of attacks, but that's not been the case recently. We have the case of Lahad Datu in Sabah back in 2013, when we had some intrusions on that part, and also now, of course, with the ISIS in the kind of sweeping into the region, and all these little things may not seem like a big deal for now, but he's saying that if there's not enough awareness and we're not addressing it immediately, in the long run, it could be a very major threat for our country and also for the region itself.
Yeah.
And just going back to the previous news, we already have 70 Malaysians who have left the country to go fight in Syria, and it wouldn't take long before that number goes up to 100 or 200. And because of that, it's very, very important, not only as Malaysians but also for ASEAN to immediately come up with a measure to curb this problem.
Yes, but at the same time, what the biggest question is, people just can barely ask, what is non-traditional security anyways? Well, that simply is something that which are rarely given attention by society. But even it happens, it can threaten the nation or the surrounding areas, even create a conflict in the relationship, the relation between the nations. So in the level of ASEAN, such as human trafficking, and it is not actually a problem of national security, but it can threaten all the sovereignty and also relation between the two countries. So that's when all this non-traditional security needs to come in about. So like you mentioned, about 20 years ago, the presence of foreigners was not the security threat, but now this could actually be one of them. So it also, again, it leads to another worrisome matter.
And it's interesting how he also mentioned foreign workers who are here.
Yeah.
Of course, while they are here for their economic benefits, trying to get a job, of course, a lot of them have not managed to get what was promised to them when they first entered the country, and sadly, they had to resort to other means of making a living, and some of it could be snatching handbags, breaking into houses, and these little things could also be another threat to us in the long run, because once you walk down that path, of course, it's very hard for them to turn back as well, especially when that has become their way of making a living.
And then the other one of the examples is also they actually bring or smuggle all the drugs illegally to the countries, and then many of them are actually foreigners. So that's another one of the elements that we can add. Well, let's move on to the next news about Vietnam. That apparently they have these 5 priorities for the ASEAN community, and then it sounds very ambitious coming from the Vietnam, and they are apparently ready to make its contribution to the next phase of this development.
So this year actually marks the 20th anniversary of Vietnam's participation in ASEAN, and over the years they have not only managed to demonstrate their responsibility, managed to fulfill their duties to ASEAN. They've also actually made some contributions, of course, their own contributions. And this year, they have come up with 5 more ways, like you were just saying, on how they can contribute to ASEAN and make a significant impact. So the first one will, of course, be the 2015 ASEAN Community, where they are going to work or come up with plans where they are going to examine the domestic regulations in the context of Vietnam's commitments within ASEAN itself. And following that, the most important thing, which is raising awareness in ASEAN, as well as Vietnam's role in the bloc in terms of raising awareness.
Actually, about the awareness of ASEAN, Malaysia is the last. So I think Malaysia should do something about to bring the awareness, which actually the nation has been doing something. But then talking about Vietnam, they also want to try even harder to bring up the awareness about the ASEAN especially. And then to continue today, the points that you mentioned about the 5 priorities, the third one will be they want to strengthen the solidarity, unity, and also ASEAN's central role in maintaining peace, stability, security, and cooperation in the region. And also to help foster ASEAN external relations with a focus on fulfilling its role as coordinator for ASEAN and EU relation, which will be July 2012 until July 2015. While preparing for and then assuming the role as coordinator for ASEAN-India relation as well.
And of course, bilateral relationships is another thing that's important when it comes to the ASEAN integration. And we have a lot of signing of treaties, pacts, MOUs happening within the region, and especially in terms of Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. And that's one of the most important things, because only when there is an understanding between all the countries in the region can we go further in terms of the connectivity or the integration that we're talking about. And another thing that Vietnam is looking at is also to strengthen their collaboration among Vietnamese authorities to take part in all this ASEAN cooperation, and also prepare for the establishment of the ASEAN community. And it seems Vietnam is trying really hard to make its impact or make its presence felt in ASEAN itself.
Another point will be Vietnam and the issues with South China Sea. That actually the relation between the Vietnam and China, the China wanted to develop and improve the relationship with the Vietnam, and then just recently they also wanted to build up the relationship with the Philippines as well. But then the relationship between China and Vietnam, hopefully it gets better, because South China Sea, the issues has been a long-term issues. And then this is actually related to ASEAN issues, one of the ASEAN issues.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because speaking of the South China Sea issue, that's one of the main problem that Malaysia will be facing as the chairman of ASEAN this year, where of course there's been a lot of expectations on Malaysia. We have also taken over the chairmanship at a very crucial time, because the AEC is expected to happen this year. We have the South China Sea issue going on. We have all this building of the Silk Road, connectivity, open air policy, just a lot of things going on for all the countries to catch up. And Malaysia has to sort of spearhead this whole effort in this region. And are we actually capable of that?
You're right there, because all those projects seem very ambitious and also at the same time encouraging. But then addressing all these major regional issues need to be addressed at the right time, and then also to be addressed in the right manner to be able to come with the solutions. All right, we'll take a short break, and then when we return, we'll bring more news from Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. And you are still with the Grace.
And this is Gowri.
Right. Just now we talked about all those priorities, 5 main priorities that Vietnam is focusing towards ASEAN. But let's come back to our nation, Malaysia, where Malaysia, we mentioned about this year is Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship, and it's very crucial year for Malaysia that we have to take a lot of steps forward to make it happen. Like literally make it happen. But there are a lot of challenges at the same time, Gowri, right?
And I think the biggest challenge here is being a people-centered ASEAN, which is the main theme of ASEAN this year, how they want to focus more on the people. But it's very difficult, although the slogan this year is our people, our community, our vision. For a very long time, ASEAN has been criticized, and I think it's still being criticized for being very elite-driven and very, very state-centric. Because a lot of times when whatever activities, whatever projects that are taking place, the ones who are usually involved are like political leaders, officials, or like some experts who are well-known, or some public policy makers. And these are the people who usually are involved in all the discussions. And because of that, the people usually feel left out, or either that, or they just have no idea what's going on. So the biggest challenge here is how we are going to reach out to all these people from every walk of life, from students to the working class, to the veteran business owners, and how to make everyone aware of what ASEAN is and how important it is to us.
So, like we mentioned before shortly about the awareness of ASEAN level in Malaysia, that's one of the biggest challenge because like you mentioned that it's not only about those elites. They will need to work for ASEAN. It's also just the people in general. They need to know what are the what actually the ASEAN is all about, and what are all those projects that's been going on, and then how they feel the sense of belonging to ASEAN. So that's one of the challenges, but also there are other tough challenges as Malaysia tries to actually lead ASEAN towards the fulfillment of AEC. And also the projects such as ASEAN Single Window, ASEAN Single Aviation Market, ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework, and such. All those ASEAN goals are just listed out there.
And although they are listed, even the names itself, ASEAN Single Window, ASEAN Single Aviation Market, and this may not mean anything to someone who probably don't have a knowledge in politics when you talk about ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework, or even something like the ASEAN Economic Community. Well, I think the challenge here is to break it down to people and to explain it to them in conventional language and not using all these economic and political jargons because it's terms that people are not too familiar with. And what we want is for everyone to share the goal of ASEAN, to share the vision of ASEAN, and for them to come together and be a part of it. And to do that, they first need to really understand what ASEAN is all about.
In fact, ASEAN has 3 pillars already, 3 main pillars, which is political, economic, and socioculture, where socioculture is hardly covered by the ASEAN, and not many people know what are all those issues that have been raised, or not even issues, the events that's been happening regarding or related to socioculture side. So it is something that people needs to, feel that they are related to these issues and events.
Actually, that's true. A lot of the projects or the steps taken have been very emphasized in terms of economic pillar with what we're talking about, the connectivity, the economic integration, and probably sociocultural is the I wouldn't say the only, but probably the most effective area to get everyone together because when culture is something that that's different, that's unique in every nation, and it's one of the easiest way for people to come together and exchange knowledge about the different languages, different culture. As much as, of course, the economic and political pillar are also important, but probably the social cultural will be the most effective in terms of getting all the people together.
Yeah, in fact, yesterday we managed to interview the people to talk about all this, bring awareness about heritage in ASEAN, how closely linked we are, even though we may seem that we are far away. Malaysia could be far away from Indonesia or even Vietnam. But then when you go to the root and the historical facts, we're all related, surprisingly. So it's also to know about or our history and how we are linked together, language, culture, all those entertainment, even like, for example, music, art, performing art. We are so related closely together. So it is one of the challenges that Malaysia is facing. But not only that, like we mentioned shortly before, the issues regarding South China Sea. It's a long-term matters to most of the ASEAN countries there.
And it's interesting because as much as Malaysia has always been neutral
Right.
In its sense, it's time for them to actually make a decision now and try to solve this issue because as a chair, as a leader, it's very hard for you to not how do I say this, to not have a stand or to try to be neutral in certain cases. In this case, especially Malaysia needs to be clear about how to resolve this issue. And of course, China is expanding. They are going ahead with their what people have been calling their expansionist agenda, trying to breach into the Vietnam territory, Philippines territory. But with what's happening this year with Malaysia as the chairman of ASEAN 2015, it's time for us to step up our game and to show all the other countries that we can be a leader and
for sure.
solve problems in the region.
And in fact, the South China Sea is Malaysia's one of the best interest to manage and its dispute with China and also bilaterally than internationalizing it. So it will not take the risk of disrupting its beneficial relations with China because any disruptions will entails the economic costs. So we'll see how Malaysia has been leading so far, but we'll see the improvement and also the expectations that we have because this money is very crucial for Malaysia and a lot of things to be done, a lot of work is there.
And one more thing is a lot of skeptics are saying that the deadline for the ASEAN community will not be met, which is of course December 2015.
Right.
And I think that's something that we just have to accept as well when it comes to economic integration. It's not something that you can achieve in just 1 year. It probably takes some time. So another important agenda for Malaysia is also to come up with a concrete plan for post-2015 on how to sort of follow up to all the efforts for other countries, whoever's going to be the chairman next year, so they can easily follow up and continue with whatever actions that we make.
Right, you're right there. So stay tuned for the next interview that we're going to talk about the post-ASEAN 2015 there. Well, we talked shortly about economic, and then let's move on to how Singaporean investment in Myanmar see a very significant increase there. And the amount of FDI flowing into Myanmar from Singapore has been increasing quite significantly in recent years, and then it has risen 41.5% from the 2012.
And of course, some of the factors that has been attributed to this is their urban development, their connectivity, and also their finance. And this is according to Lai Shu Ying, who is the Southeast Asia Director of International Enterprise. And Lai also said that this surge in investment to Myanmar's abundant natural and human resources is because of how it's so strategically located where China, India, and Southeast Asia converge. So it seems that Myanmar is very strategically located in this location where it's easier for them to bring in all these foreign direct investments into the country.
Yeah, in fact, Myanmar has been quite a hot spot for the investment for foreign countries, and not only Singapore but also Japan. They have been doing some investment, especially when it comes to automobile industry. And in fact, this country has the advantage of this favorable geographical positions, like you mentioned, and also the Myanmar's recent political and economic reforms have inspired optimism among the foreign investors, which means they actually did open the door to welcome these foreign investors. But despite this positive look, investors, they still need to take the risks and challenges that still the market is still fresh, and then all this because of because of Myanmar being isolated for many years. So they have, when the steps are taken into consideration, it also needs to, the risk and other the challenges need to be also taken consideration at the same time.
And another issue is also about the Myanmar general elections that are coming up. Like you were just saying, Myanmar has only recently emerged from decades of isolation,
Right.
and they've been under the military rule, and it has been very difficult for them to come up with any sort of reform at all, because their whole government is pretty much 80% controlled by the military, and that has also impacted the economy of the country. And in this case, even the drop in oil prices and uncertainty surrounding Myanmar's general election are weighing on the country's economy, which is why they are trying to look for more foreign direct investment in the first place. And in spite of all this, we know that Aung San Suu Kyi has raised the possibility of boycotting the elections because she feels like there is not enough reforms happening in the country. Although the president has promised that we're going to reform the constitution, we're going to reform this, human rights and all, but we still get the same news being reported over and over again on how all these rights are still getting abused, and how all these different ethnic groups in Myanmar are still clashing, fighting against each other. So, Aung San Suu Kyi herself probably is not too optimistic about Myanmar at the moment.
She's not. She's actually raised the possibility of boycotting this election, which will be happen the first week of November. So this is also regards to the drop in oil prices and also uncertainties that have been, coming about the Myanmar's general elections. So as much as Myanmar has a lot of potential for foreign investors, the internal issues are still there in the country, and then regarding these elections, it's also one of the crucial moments for Myanmar. So they really need to, see which one is their priority.
And like you were also saying earlier, that their recent political and economic reforms have actually inspired optimism among the foreign investors, but it has to start from the country itself, because there's no point of projecting this very sort of beautiful reputation for Myanmar in the eyes of foreign investors, but when it comes to people in their own country, they are not really convinced about about the future of Myanmar itself and where the country can go.
So we'll take another short break. So when we return, we'll probably talk about the Cambodia as well as the other the Southeast Asia news.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back, and this is Grace.
Hi, this is Gowri.
So we are still at our news commentary to bring more news from Southeast Asia. So let's move on to Cambodia, where there are 10 female Cambodian land activists. They jailed over the protest last year, which is 2014, have been pardoned and released from prison.
So these activists were arrested in light of the land grabbing issue that was happening in Cambodia, and it's something that's been happening for quite some time, and not only in Cambodia, of course, in a few other countries as well. And these few activists were the ones who actually stood up to these authorities, who actually came over to forcefully evict the people from their homes, and these activists stood up for them and said, no, we're not going to let that happen, which is why they landed in jail. But apart from them being freed, there's not really been any other concrete action taken by the Cambodian government to actually address this land eviction issue in Cambodia.
And also, Cambodia's appeal court actually later they reduced the eighth of their jail terms to 10 months, while the sentence for the eldest campaigner was to cut to about 6 months. And most of the activities are from these few dozen families remaining in the capital's neighborhood, an area from which about around 4,000 families were forcibly evicted, like you mentioned before. And then these land evictions are one of the foremost human rights issues in Cambodia, and that can actually lead to ASEAN level issues with all those residents claiming over the land rudely ignored and the protesters facing all these problems.
And that's why I'm glad you mentioned about ASEAN, because this is another issue when we talk about human rights in the region. If we are going to carefully address it all, land eviction is another thing that they should start looking at, because forcing someone out of their home is kind of a big deal. When where are they going to stay, where are they going to go, do they have the means to look for a different home? Because most of the times when this land grabbing happens, it's because of some new infrastructural project that's going to come to the place, to the vicinity. And is that really what's best for the people, and for them to just being forced out of their home and being forced to go somewhere else?
And the interesting part here, interesting part about this news is that they mentioned female. So that goes with the gender issues as well, perhaps. And then that in the bigger picture, it comes with human rights. So they said there are 10 female the land right activists. And then I wonder how this Cambodia, the country itself, have been reacting towards these gender issues in the country. So that leads to another problem.
Probably because they were women, there was more of an outcry from the people because this 10 female were the ones who got arrested.
Yeah. Well, moving on to our last news here, which is pretty much like quite an exciting news, Gowri, because we just reported about this news about Hillary Clinton, and now this has actually attracted a lot of eyes and then attention, not only USA but also from around the world.
Of course, when we talk about the President of the United States, that's something that anyone from any part of the world can tell you who it is. As opposed to if you ask them who's the Prime Minister of Malaysia or even Singapore. ... Exactly, a cricket sound. So, of course, this election it concerns pretty much every country all around the world. Everyone wants to know who is going to be the next president of the United States. And it seems that Barack Obama is not quite popular this time.
Yes.
And his ratings have declined a lot in a lot of polls that were conducted in line of the elections that are coming up. And it's actually quite far away. It's happening in 2016, but the hype is already there. Yeah. Everyone's already so excited discussing about the possibility, the outcome of the elections.
And then there are a few questions, like going around. For example, is America really ready to choose a woman as its commander-in-chief, or do the Democrats have another candidate other than Hillary Clinton in the wings? After she was rattled by the recent email scandal, she had a few of issues here and there. And what about the Republican Party candidates for the White House? So many questions are already, being asked, and that means people are very interested in all those, coming up elections in USA.
Hey, I think America is ready for a woman. They've already pretty much done everything else in history. They have a black president. It's time for a woman now, and for them to maybe set an example. I mean, well, of course, there are already other female presidents in other countries in the world, in South America, but it's probably time for United States to also follow suit and see what a woman can bring to the country for a change.
That's correct, and actually America being the very gigantic country, that could actually set a very good example, and it depends how the plan executes it after that.
So we'll have to wait until next year to see if our predictions happen.
Well, we'll see how it goes, but we also have a big hopes for America anyways. So, well, that's the end of our news commentary session today. And we have our social channels, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. So leave us the feedback, and the feedbacks are always welcome.
And don't forget to also subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the daily podcasts. And if you want to listen to us while you're on the go, just download the TuneIn app and look for Durian ASEAN. And we will see you later at 9 o'clock for our next session.